Think about this, folks. Robots mating with humans and creating biological offspring. What we're talking about here is not editing genes. We're talking about editing humans. This is human 2.0 cooked up right in Hell's Kitchen. This is the stuff of sci-fi, Steve.
Yeah, and I maintain that all sci-fi, all science fiction is the outpicturing of the control entities. I want to make this statement. On the human level, sure, there's a shadow government. There are people. I maintain that the fallen angels, look, only 200 of the fallen angels were bound in everlasting chains of darkness. Those are the 200 that came on Mount Hermon after the flood, destroyed the human race. And the reason they were after the flood is obviously where do you think King Og and all of those guys came from, including Goliath and his brothers. So when we're talking about Borgicated, we're talking about being assimilated into a, if you will, non-God-created body that the devil rules and reigns through because you've already given yourself over to him in order to accept the mark of the beast. I'll tell you something that Tom Horn, it may have been Nita Horn, brought out to everybody's attention, including mine, is no one before, I believe this revelation, see, it was time sensitive, no one ever made the statement that taking the mark of the beast, would change a human DNA genome set to the point where it could no longer be human. So it can't be saved. So when that guy, that entity in Rome, who says more hateful about God and the Holy Scriptures and everything, and even babies, and speaks not up about the pedophilia or the perversion. Now, let me claim this, too. Through all my years of study, whether people want to argue with it or not, all of the perversions we're seeing today were generated by the fallen angels. Historians, up to a couple thousand years BC, talked about literally the giants had comely women. They preferred the consort of each other. I think it was Diodorus that said that. So where we're at right now, in my opinion, now why is this important? This isn't Sheila Zelinsky just interviewing me, Steve Quayle, to basically scare you in any way. To equip the saints. The saints have been basically, here you go, nudicated, okay? That's just for you, Sheila. N-U-D-I-C-A-T-E-D. Nudicated of the preparation, stripped of the preparation they should have been given to deal with such perverse entities that are now released on the earth. And when I talk about AI, the technical term is artificial intelligence. I call it Antichrist intelligence. And in chapter 14, this is really important. I said, the darling of deception, destruction, and damnation. People always quote, you're just a bitter Christian because you don't realize that we're going to create a better world. Show me that in history. Show me where any technology that has had a military use has ever been for the betterment of mankind. They'll say, well, look at atomic power. And I'll say, look at the Pacific Ocean and Fukushima. I said, we've been fooked. F-U-Q-U-E-D. Sorry, some people said, well, if you were a real Christian, you wouldn't use those kind of terms. I said, well, if you were a real Christian, you get real. Charlie the tuna, for those of you that grew up in my generation, is no longer able to stand and give you the wink and talk about how great StarKist tuna is. And I remember I used to eat StarKist white albacore tuna all the time. And now the sea, a third of the life in the sea is dying. When Fukushima first happened, within 2 days, I said that. Somebody took me to task on one of the devil boards, that's a bulletin board, say it's not a third of the sea, the Pacific Ocean. It is when you deal with flowing in to some of the big tributaries, So can I tell you something? I would say this to everyone. You better get over not listening to me or whoever's telling you, because I'm not the only voice. Sheila's not the only voice. David Langford's not the only voice. Tom's not the only voice. But you know what's interesting? The people that knock us, do you realize, and I want people to understand this, we are up against AI, advanced intelligence, in addition, coupled with some of the most sophisticated evil entities in the world. That's why I say pray about it. I'm praying that God gives people the spirit of revelation and the understanding in order to acknowledge Jesus. And I think it becomes imperative, Sheila, that people understand that the dark and demonic possession of robots in all shapes, forms, and functions has already taken place, but it's nothing new. It's taken place in the past. It's in my chapter 15, Ghosts in the Machines. It becomes imperative, it becomes necessary to make people understand that AI in itself, through standard computer programming, cannot produce consciousness. That means initiate it. It can mock it, it can reflect it, it can mimic it, but it cannot produce it. Yet an entity, the ghost in the machine, and let's just call it an evil spirit in the machine, can take on everything. So, again, I hope people go back and listen to this twice, because what I've said on your program, I've never said before. All of you who are on the Faces of Death book, they're actually generating artificial construct entities that at some point they can do, and they have done this. I maintain a lot of the politicians are already replaced. They're the replacements. There's a whole private story on that I'd share with you, but I won't share it publicly. Quite candidly, most people wouldn't believe it. So the thing is that we're at a point now like no other, terminated. And if people get mad at me, I wonder if they even believe in Jesus, because I'll say one thing. If Jesus himself said that if he didn't shorten the days, there'd be no flesh alive, and you know what the word flesh is in Greek and Hebrew, you'll understand he's talking about that which is creating his image. And on the cover of my book, I want to share something. It's a terminated robot, different than obviously the original Terminator robot, but there's a laser scanner coming out of his forehead, and it's reading a subdural, if you will, like chip that's been on the skull. It will not be enough to kill humans. They will take those chips, and they cease to be humans when they take the mark of the beast. How many people have you ever heard say that, Sheila?
Well, yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard someone say it that way, that when you take the mark, you cease to be human, which therefore then you're not eligible for salvation. That's frightening right there. I just thought of something as you were talking, Steve. It says, for since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. Well, that's what we're talking about right there, is what happens if you're not man anymore? Some of these Hollywood hybrids, I think some of them are some type of, you can call them reptilians, I call them demons. These things are not human, and it's no wonder that they're all in an uproar about Trump's SCOTUS pick. I mean, when you're cutting off the food source to Baal with all these bloodthirsty, blood-sacrificing demons, who, by the way, have no problem ripping children from the womb, but they're sad when they get ripped from their mother's arms. It's absolutely abhorrent, Steve.
Yes, it is. It just is astonishingly wicked, And when I say that, astonishingly wicked,